Perfect. All right. So I'm Jennifer Wall, and I do work for the Transition Alliance of South Carolina. We are funded under the State Department of South Carolina. So if you are in South Carolina and do not know about our resources or any of the things that we do, I will kind of mention some of those things. And everything that's on our website is completely free. So anyone from any other state that likes or sees something, then please feel free to use those. But this is not a plug for where I work at all. The goal for our time together is really to talk about the community and school-based resources and activities that you guys can use within your classrooms to improve the work-based learning opportunities for the students, and then using that data aligned with their IEP goals, but also while cultivating the relationships with your business partners. And all of those things really go hand in hand. And when we look at the whole process from starting with, transition assessments guide our IEP, that guides the decision making that when we're picking the work-based learning opportunities. And we all know what it's like to be in a classroom. You can't get to every single job site. So how are we going to simulate those things within our classroom and still collect data to help us make those decisions when we're working on the IEP goals? I did want to start with a national survey that was done about 3 years ago by the United States Department of Education, and they really looked across the nation at what strategies are available to support students in transition, what programs and services are available to for the students that are at risk of dropping out, and then how are students identified as at risk of dropping out in those specific states and districts. And some of the key findings that I'm going to mention for today's time together is, if you look at key finding number one, state and district strategies to help students transition. If you look through this list, some of these things may or may not be surprising to you about how many states and the district levels have those. But one thing I'm going to mention is the mentoring that is, 19 of the states had that, but 64% had that within their districts. That is a level of work-based learning that can occur in the classroom. Key finding number two is education options that are actually required or recommended by the state to decrease the risk of students dropping out. And so if you look at what is required across some of the data that are here on the screen, I do want to point out the CTE coursework and the work-based learning, including internships and apprenticeships, that 44% recommended, but we only had 3 states in some of the data collection. Of course, this is not comprehensive of every single state or district across the nation. This is just giving us an idea of those who did look at the survey and complete it. Key finding 3 is really looking at that early warning system and looking at the student data that they have and, what are they doing? And so if you look at the things that are on the screen here, none of this is surprising. We look at attendance, behavior, and course completion. Those are things that we're really looking at across all dropout prevention programs. But the big thing here that I want us to take away from that survey is, if we look at this graphic that's on the screen, really it takes all of this work. It takes all of the work from the state support to the district level support, having an early warning system, looking at your dropout prevention services, and then having high quality transition services within the classroom, within the school. Those are things that contribute to the reduced dropout rate of students. And so when we think about our work-based learning opportunities within the school and within the community, we really want to, look at the strategies like the individualized education or career plan for each student, the information about the next school setting, where are they transitioning to, what programs are we looking at to teach the social emotional skills, those executive functional skills such as organization and study skills. And then, to me, most importantly, the work-based learning. So these are some resources in South Carolina. I'm not going to spend a tremendous amount of time talking just about resources in South Carolina, but I did want to point out, looking at SCOAS and looking at different curricula that are available. Every state will have resources that are specific to their state, but that's really important that you look to see what you have available in your state, because a lot of times all of the work-based learning that you are doing within your community and within your district relates to jobs that are available within your community map. And so as a team at a high school or a district, creating that community map of jobs that are available within a 50-mile radius, within a 20-mile radius, depending on how large your district and your neighborhood type jobs are, those are important things to look at for your school districts, because where I live, we have one botanical garden that is within a 70-mile radius of my house, or from our school district. So if we have students that are looking into specific areas, and a botanical garden is something that they're interested in, the only place that they would be able to work in that is really kind of far away. And so looking at those, and there's a website I'm going to show you that we have in South Carolina, and I know every state does something very similar, but it gives you what jobs are currently available. And this really helps when we do the transition assessment and take that O-Net data and really dive into the career interest and ability profiler to see what the students can do. And then looking at where are jobs available, how much education and training do I need, and those type resources. And so on the screen are some definitions of work-based learning opportunities or experiences. If you work with a pre-ETS provider, which is a pre-employment transition service, work-based learning is very much a part of those services that are available. But work-based learning is, getting a supervised program that's sponsored by education or training organization that links knowledge gained at a work site with the planned program of study. Really, we've got to provide these experiences. And I realize that within a school day, packing all of that in is so difficult, because we do have to create those relationships with the other, with the people in the community, with folks that run those businesses that have those experiences. But work-based learning experiences is one of the strongest predictors of adult employment success. And so the evidence-based predictors have been identified as ways that when students leave high school and transition to the next step of life, these are strong predictors. And the next one that probably is not mind-blowing to you, but another very strong predictor is summer employment. If we have students that are engaged in summer employment, their junior or senior years, they are more likely to be engaged in full-time employment once they exit school. And so these are things that as educators, we need to be looking at within that short period of time that we have them in high school and even late middle school, to really start looking at the skills that the student is not only interested in, but has a skill set. So on your screen are some examples of work-based learning. So some of these may or may not be applicable in your school district or your state. I know a lot of folks have gone away from virtual job shadowing, but I can tell you that there are a lot of really great videos and simulation type videos that you can watch that are not really considered virtual job shadowing. It's really a simulation and letting someone see a day in the life of before you create the job shadowing opportunity. For example, if I have a student who really wants to work with animals, however, that student, has an issue with smells or washes their hands frequently. One of the things that you have to do in a dog groomer is, you clean out cages and you get into the cages and you help with different things with those animals. And so seeing videos of every specific job that you're going to do in those, sometimes that helps us, with showing the student the specific skills and discrete skills that we're going to have to teach and learn before we actually get into the job site. Because once the students are going into the jobs and job shadowing, we want to make sure that we've made an informed decision when we're exploring those different type jobs. So SBE stands for school-based enterprise. A lot of states have that embedded into things like their DECA programs, which is a marketing based class. A lot of school districts have that built into the curriculum and built into the pathway to diploma. But no matter how you look at a school-based enterprise, it's brilliant because you are teaching all of the skills that students will need to run a business, be a part of a business, be an employee, be an employer, and you have structured time within the classroom to work on those. Service learning is a personal favorite of mine. Many times individuals with disabilities are recipient of service learning projects from other parts of your community or through, other organizations. And this is an excellent opportunity to teach the students how to give back to their community, how to work towards a goal, how to be a part of a team, how to work towards something, decision-making, choice-making, and all of those important skills. The ones that you see stars by, the definitions of all of those kind of are different based on where you live, honestly, and what that looks like within your district. CTE is a great partner to have lots of opportunities with those. In South Carolina, we have career ready qualifiers. I know that that is a federal term, but what that looks like in each school is very different, but there are resources across all of these. I just wanted to kind of talk through what work-based learning means whenever I'm using that terminology. But anything that we do that is creating job skill training is work-based learning. Those things that we are doing, we want to make sure that the outcomes that we're looking at from the students is they're gaining insight into the work experience opportunity. They are looking at expectations that that specific job has, and maybe not even that specific employer, but the industry in general. If you work at one specific location that is a branch that is nationwide, what that looks like when you're working for a large company, what it looks like when you're working for those specific positions, and then receiving guidance from people that are actually in the industry. As educators, we can help simulate a lot of those activities. We can have a classroom, and then we can have an area where the student is clocking in and out. And I love that because when we're in the classroom, I'm your instructor and you're my student. When we're in the job site or we're in the simulation area of our classroom or a different classroom, well, you clock in and out because you are now the employee and I am your employer. And so it sets a different tone. And then it helps develop the networking relationships that are needed, not only to do the work-based learning, but another very important skill that we're able to work on is when you don't like your place of employment, or you don't like the specific job that you're doing and you are looking for other employment. How do you quit a job? How do you give a notice from a job? What is appropriate? How do you maintain the relationship with someone so that you can still use them as a reference? Because we want to prepare our students for, the work-based learning opportunities that will transition into successful post-school outcomes, not just successful job at one specific location. And so I wanted to show a couple examples. And of course, I do not work for any of these places. Microburst Learning is free in South Carolina to South Carolina educators. And they have those videos that I was talking about where it kind of shows you the different opportunities, what it looks like. The picture, the screenshot I put on this screen is a childcare provider. A lot of times we have students that want to go into childcare. And so in lots of states, there are requirements for a childcare credential and what education and training is required to do that job. And so it simulates those because a lot of times I know where I live, it is very difficult to just go and basically visit a daycare because you can't actually be in the facility if you aren't trained or have a credential. You're not able to be around children and those type things. So this is a way to kind of simulate some of those activities and see videos and pictures and things like that. A school system that I know partnered with a local church, and some of those churches provide an activity on Sundays for the students that simulate what you would do in a daycare. So for example, they have to cut things out, put things together. There's a lesson and activities that go along with it. So the school was able to prepare those activities and lesson for that activity that will happen on Sunday, but what the teacher is able to do is teach the students in the classroom about all of the things that are going to be done with the kids. And so that's a way to simulate the activity and be able to teach the skills in an area that, will create opportunities. So Project Discovery is, we've already mentioned that today. Michelle talked about this a little bit. I'm going to talk about it more in a few minutes and talk about how the hands-on curriculum is so important to use in the classroom, and how doing that in the classroom helps the self-confidence to be able to go out and do things that maybe your student would not have been able to do otherwise. So this again is the Transition Alliance website. I did want to kind of talk about a few of these things just because they are resources that are free. The Building Blocks model is an instructional resource that really breaks down industry models across O-Net. So O-Net was made by the Department of Labor, and it is broken into lots of different pathways. Now, all of the pathways are not listed on this Building Blocks model, but there are a lot of areas that students find interesting whenever they are looking through things like the Competency Model Clearinghouse and other places that we really explore big jobs. So, food and beverage is something that, we have a lot of students that may be their stepping stone. That could be that summer employment. It could be where they start their work-based learning. So when my very first job was actually in a restaurant myself, and so I worked at a restaurant as a hostess, and then I moved my way into different areas. And so I see how using the food and beverage competencies to teach students about the different components of customer service. So if any of you have ever worked in customer service, you know that you can learn examples and non-examples while being in the customer service field, but it's a great opportunity to teach our students the interpersonal skills that will generalize to other jobs, not just food and beverage. And then displaying strong business and work ethics. The competencies that are on the screen definitely go along with your food and beverage service competency model, but you can see how all of those things can generalize to other possibilities. Overcoming obstacles. This is something that I strongly suggest folks look at whenever they are teaching any kind of work-based learning or job skills, because there's so many skills that our students have when it comes to work. Criticism, accepting constructive criticism, how to handle a situation that is, an adverse, how to deal with conflict, how to ask for, an accommodation in the workplace appropriately. And, those are type things that we, are spending a lot of time with, young adults, because, they need to have that practice. They need to look at communication, decision-making, goal setting, and they need to build their confidence. And so what a great way to do that in the classroom, in a controlled environment with their teachers and, folks that really know them. These are the modules. I just did like a quick screenshot of one of them so you can kind of see how they're laid out. And this is one of the middle school modules that I just did a quick screenshot of. And it just goes through different areas of communication skills, decision-making skills, and it gives little scenarios to help. You do have to put your email address in on this website, but it doesn't cost anything. And it kind of helps with those simulation activities. I think that when we were teaching students to deal with adverse situations and deal with conflict, I think it's a great idea to make it contrived in your school to begin with. Maybe have your student go and ask their math teacher for a specific accommodation that is already on their IEP, or advocate for something specific that the student needs, and then have that math teacher ask why, or have the math teacher say no, because then that gives us the opportunity in the classroom to go over how to advocate for something that is your right. Because once the student gets into the workforce, we know that that IEP isn't going to follow along with them, and they get every accommodation in the work site that they need. So they need to understand why they need a checklist or why they need pictures to help them with specific things, because then they can ask their supervisors for those specific accommodations that they know that they need to be successful and why. And honestly, throughout my experience, I have seen we have a local grocery store chain, and we have a local movie theater chain in North and South Carolina that, because of accommodations given to individuals with disabilities, it was such a great tool for all students that, I mean, for all employees, that they ended up implementing those type activities for all employees, not just a one-time deal for an accommodation. So the next resource is called Skills to Pay the Bills. And so this is one of my favorite things that was made by the Office of Disability Employment Policy. If you have not seen this, it is, it's a little bit dated as far as some of the things that are on there. However, there's a lot of really great resources on communication. And so when I go to the next slide, a lot of you are going to laugh, because if you are much younger than me, you will understand what all of these things are. But if you're my age, you will know that, you know, this is the way that people, oh, I didn't skip a slide, did I? Here we go. So people communicate with each other. So TTYLJKROTF. So some of you may look at that and know exactly what those things mean. And, you know, I have 5 children. My youngest child is 16. My oldest is 21. So I should definitely know text lingo and things like that, but I do have to think about it. Now, when you're in the job site, using text talk and using using jargon is not appropriate. And so we really have to talk to our students about, you know, when you send an email, 90% of people have their email go to their phone. So when they reply to an email, it's almost like they're texting. Well, how you send an email back to your boss is going to look very different than how you send a snap or a text or, you know, a DM or whatever they're called these days back to your friends. What that looks like is very different. So this specific video on Skills to Pay the Bills is on communication. And really, it's not to make you laugh, but you will laugh, because the young lady who's working in the line, and it's a cafeteria style line that you would see in a typical university or college. So when someone comes through, she rings up each individual item, tells the total, and then you move on and find a table, cafeteria style lunch. So it's something that we can all identify with. And she doesn't actually use any verbal words. She uses all text talk in the entire time that she's speaking to the customers. And so it is funny when you watch the video, because you don't understand the thing that she's saying. Well, neither do the customers. And so it's a great opportunity to teach the students about communication. And then once you move into some of the other lessons within Skills to Pay the Bills, then you talk about verbal communication, nonverbal communication, and really mastering all soft skills for the workplace. And these are some of the lessons, like I said, could be a little bit dated. I mean, some of the pictures, you know, show actual phones. And we know that no one, I'm not going to say no one, a lot of folks don't have home phones. But if you go to a job site, there are landlines that you have to answer. So answering the phone is a skill. My youngest daughter works at a pizza place, and she has to answer the phone. And that was something that she had to work on, because answering the phone and saying a full sentence when she answers the phone is not something that she normally does, because she doesn't actually talk on the phone very much. So, you know, looking at all of the things that the soft skills that the students need, you know, individually. And I saw a question pop up about curriculum. I think that Michelle's going to send you guys this presentation, and it's being recorded. So all of the resources will be available. But the last slide has my contact information. So if there's a very specific resource that you saw or that you really like, I know where all of these things are, and I can send you the link quicker than you can Google it. So do not worry about that whatsoever. I am trying to give you lots of information and lots of resources so that you can go back and, you know, really use what's helpful to you and your teachers. I do have like specific resources on here for teachers, and then resources if you work with teachers as a coach, coordinator, to kind of give them resources. One of the things we've worked on in the last couple of years is looking at our Google Analytics of how long people actually watch videos. And so all of our videos are gauged through YouTube. And so whenever you watch 3 minutes, we get that data. It doesn't tell us who, so don't worry. But what we've done is we've taken that information and we've made videos that we call shorts. And we find that coordinators and instructional coaches love that because they're able to send a short video to their teachers. And if teachers want more information, then they're able to go and find those resources. Or if it's just simply something that they needed reminded about, well, then they've only spent 5 minutes looking into that specific skill. So I would not be a transition educator if I did not bring up the fact that every decision that we make when we are looking at work-based learning, instructional opportunities, or work-based learning experiences within the community, everything should be based on our transition planning and assessments. There are lots of brilliant transition assessments, beautiful transition assessments available nationally. And so if you've been in this field 20 years, we used to if somebody had a good transition assessment, it was like finding gold. And, we would do whatever we could to share that with our friends. And, now there's so many published ones. There's so many, evidence-based transition planning that are comprehensive across all areas. But you may have students that it's a really specific area of need that you want to assess when transition planning. And I always tell the story of my youngest son. He transferred to a new school in the 10th grade, and his special education teacher sent him an email that said, "Hey man, what do you want to do when you graduate?" And so my son replied and said, "I want to work with my dad." So the special education teacher Googled where my husband worked. And so based on the name of my husband's company, he created an IEP goal that said that my son wanted to work, be a mechanic and work on cars. And so we get to the IEP meeting and they're discussing that he's going to work on cars. So my son, I'm going to say, probably takes 3 showers a day, washes his hands, I'm going to go 10 to 20 times. And is probably the cleanest 19-year-old at this point that I've ever met. But at this point in time, it was exactly the same. We were in school. He was in school. And so I looked at him at the meeting and I looked at his teacher and I'm like, he's never touched oil. He's never pumped gas. Like, I'm kind of confused about this. And so they tell me the story about, how we derived at this goal. And my husband's company does have the name CAR in the title. It has absolutely nothing to do with working on cars, but that was how my son's post-secondary goal was written based on that. And so, of course, as a person that is a transition educator and I have my PhD in special education, I simply asked what transition plan or transition assessment that was based on. But telling you that story to tell you that, transition assessment isn't done appropriately in every single classroom across the nation. And there are plenty of resources out there. So when educators are like, man, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to use, we have so many resources. Intact is our national center. We have the coalition, which is in Kansas. I mean, there's lots of resources across everywhere for transition assessment. So if you learn nothing today, I hope that you learn that all of our decisions on work-based learning are made from transition planning, because that's where our data really starts. So this is a resource that I mentioned earlier. It's called South Carolina Works. Now, let me tell you, the really cool thing about this website is those numbers at the bottom change. So if you go to the website right now, this is not the data you're going to see, because when I did this screenshot, these are the available number of jobs. This is how many people are looking for jobs, and that's the unemployment rate. So when you go to this website, it's amazing to do it with your students, because you're like, okay, this is what you're interested in. Here's the work-based learning opportunities that we have done. What are our opportunities where we live? And, what's the percentage? What does it look like whenever we're looking for those specific jobs. And all of that relates to transition assessment and planning. You know, looking up jobs is based on an interest profiler, or it's, you know, a conversation with your students. You know, just because I say I like to work with my hands doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, I want to do certain things. And so creating the work-based learning opportunities in the classroom are helping you, you know, make those decisions. I did mention the O-Net interest profiler. If you have never used this, it's 54 questions. It's an interest profiler that asks, it's on a Likert scale, which I don't really love Likert scales. So a lot of times, you know, I suggest doing this with your student, but, you know, it's like, you know, strongly agree, neutral, strongly disagree, you know, those type things. And so sometimes that gets kind of wonky, but in the end, the results show you specific areas that the students may be interested in, which works because then you're looking at job zones. And so then that's a very broad term of the zone that the student may be interested in. And then it breaks it down into specific careers that your student may be interested in. And that's where we can start the simulation. We can start the work-based learning, because then we've really like focused on something that the student is interested in. So this specific example here is from Project Discovery. And this is students who say that they want to work with cars. They want to work with their hands. You know, these are the small engine repair. Now, the small engine that you see on the screen is for a lawnmower, but it's a great way to show step-by-step, just, you know, implementing how to do this. There's verbal prompts, ways to work on that. There's ratings. There's way to go back and like look at the interest, the skills, the preference, needs, all within the activities that are done within the Project Discovery, and it's all simulated within the classroom. And so you're not partnering with, you know, a local car dealership and asking them if you can come in and take apart a car. You know, you are doing this in your classroom and looking at the skills that your students have and collecting data across their skill level, their interest level, and it's really it's very good use of time for the different levels of work-based learning. So individualized instruction for evidence-based practice. This is one of those things that I have mentioned earlier about the assessments, or when we talked about assessments, these other things that are on the screen are simply things that are in the module library that are around self-advocacy, soft skills, things that are really important to make sure that we cover when we're looking at work-based learning opportunities. And we do know that with work-based learning, we can partner with our CTE friends and colleagues within the school and within the district. And creating these, you know, work-based learning opportunities can be paid. Paid employment in an integrated setting is really critical. And obviously this is a continuum of activities, job shadowing, work site tours. I really love work site tours because when you go to visit, let's say you go to your local grocery store, the only thing that you see at a grocery store are the things that you see as a customer. So you may see the person who bags your groceries, you see the person who checks you out, and you see those occasional people walking around in uniform. But if you go for a work site tour, you're going to go behind the scenes. You're going to see all the folks that work in produce, all the folks in the meat department, everyone that does all of the stocking, all of the things that you actually don't just see as a customer. And so then that opens your eyes, opened your students' eyes into all of the places that you can work when you work in those specific places. Informational interviews and mentoring. I really like this because a lot of times this, you know, allows the teacher to kind of guide the interview and the mentorship. And it's called a low stakes conversation with an employer because you're just there to learn more about the job. Career focused mentoring, it's a step past the informational interview and more like a connection. It's like that first step for the partnership. Pre-boarding and onboard training. So those are, we looked at terminology across businesses and schools and how we a lot of times say the same words, but we say our own version of the word. And so pre-boarding and onboard is something that we, in special education, that's not something that we really understood when we looked at the terminology that we look at curriculum. And so we look across the continuum of work-based learning opportunities. These words are the most unfamiliar to teenagers, and particularly because it relates to the activities that happen between the time you get a job and has their first day. So all of those things that happen. So a lot of places, they have to watch videos. They have to go through training. They have to look at a lot of digital materials. When my daughter filled out her tax information at her very first job, the questions that she asked me blew my mind that she didn't know the answers to. I mean, how many dependents do I have? Okay, well, how many people do you pay their bills for, sweetie? No one, just you. But, those type things. And, new hires have to get a sense of workplace culture and the expectations of the community of that specific workplace. And so that level of information is provided, and you're not really going to learn that in an informational interview or job shadowing. So the pre-boarding activities and things, these are really important things that we can help our students see the expectation before they get to that competitive employment, because competitive employment is the goal for all students, no matter if it's part-time, if it's supported employment, it's full-time. We really want all to look towards that competitive employment goal. And so one very popular way of simulating work experiences in the classroom and in your school is through a school-based enterprise. And we spend full webinars on school-based enterprise. It is actually one of my favorite things to talk about, because everything that you do in a school-based enterprise is a job skill. From the second you walk into the classroom and clock in to the second that you clock out, every activity that we do for the full 90 minutes, 60 minutes, however long that class period may be, it's employability skills. Every activity that we have planned or not planned becomes a job skill. And I think that that really maximizes what you're doing within your school. There are a lot of resources for school-based enterprise. And basically, school-based enterprise is a real-world experience. They have key leadership roles. They produce products. They deliver products. They have services, and it's all outside the classroom. So whatever they are doing inside the classroom is basically their workstation, but the goods, services, and things that they do are outside of the classroom. So your scope and how complex you want this enterprise to be, it's completely, there is no boundary. So a properly designed school-based enterprise, it teaches academics and work-related skills, and the students design and operate the business. It's really the most amazing way to teach leadership within a business, how to be an employee, how to have a safe environment. Students engage in starting and operating a business. I'm sure, I would bet whatever you guys want to bet that out of the 69 participants that are here with us today, every single one of you knows someone who wants to be a social media influencer or a YouTuber or a gamer, or one of those other amazing ways to make millions of dollars by making videos of yourself. But guess what? That is a job skill, because if you are going to be an entrepreneur and you are going to do all of those things to be mega famous and mega rich, you've got to be able to start a business, operate a business, got to promote things, that you got to spell things correctly. So you got to have the importance of academics. You got to provide opportunities. All of the things that are on the screen relate to any of the goals that your students think that they have, for themselves. And so it empowers students. Some of the data behind school-based enterprise that kind of could be surprising is that it empowers students to become managers. A lot of times when students start out in entry-level jobs, they don't really aspire to be the boss, because that's kind of scary. But if they have effectively worked in a school-based enterprise where they've managed other employees, quality control, or any of those type things, it gives them the confidence, to really want to have that as a goal. So this is just a pretty graphic to show that we can teach all of those things through work-based learning. Students are going to gain the knowledge and transfer the skills that they have in their school-based enterprise to all other areas. School-based enterprise 100% broadens the horizons for our students. It raises, it really makes their career aspirations, develop work-related skills, and self-determination, which we know. Oh, you can steal my visual all you want to, but really it does. And self-determination, I did a lot of research in self-determination when I was a doc student and then afterwards, because, a high level of student engagement and self-determination advocacy, that is really something that students with and without disabilities need to learn how to stand up for themselves in all situations. So this is a graphic that I could spend a ton of time on, but I'm going to summarize all of this by saying development and operation of a school-based enterprise is a lot of planning, a lot of planning. And so having your students be a part of it from the beginning, your management team should include students at every level, including planning and decision-making, because if your students aren't stakeholders, then the purpose of a school-based enterprise is lost. And so the mission, the values, I created a PowerPoint that had a whole bunch of logos, like Nike without the word Nike, Adidas without Adidas, the M for McDonald's, all of those type things, and put it on the board or have it for teachers to put on the board. That's right. Nothing without us. No, nothing with, put that back up there. I saw that. That was awesome. Nothing about us without us. That's one of my favorite things. I love that. I saw it at the bottom of the screen. Okay. So sorry, sidetrack there. So with that type PowerPoint that we created, students are like, oh, that's Nike. Oh, that's Adidas. Oh, that's McDonald's. And then that gives you the conversation of, what's the what's the product? What's the message? How did you know that was Adidas? That's the brand. How did they create a brand? And then talking about vision and values, looking up those things of specific companies that, those students go to. Why do you go to Starbucks instead of Dunkin' Donuts? Why this? Why that? And that's what creates all of the things that you see on the screen. It is a lot of work. So you have to decide early. Am I going to do a product or I'm going to do a service? And so a product is literally what it is. You are making something. And a service is you are providing a service. So I'm going to give you an example of how Project Discovery has helped several schools that I know. So the greenhouse kit. This is an amazing component of Project Discovery if you are interested in having a greenhouse, learning about landscaping, or simply the independent living skill of gardening at your own home. I'm one of those people that I painted my mulch because I saw it on TikTok or something. And I'm like, oh, I can just spray paint my mulch. Don't do it. Just go ahead and take my advice, guys. Don't do it. But the example of that I can tell students, hey guys, guess what? I watched the video on spraying my mulch and here's what happened, and show them pictures, and the students laugh and we learn from it. But what's cool is using a actual curriculum like Project Discovery to teach about the greenhouse, how to grow things, how to do that. Turn that into a school-based enterprise, because who doesn't love a succulent? Who doesn't love tomatoes? Those are lots of things that, and then you can turn that product into a service, because then you are using let's just say that you use your local farmers market. You find the local farmers market that's close to your district or in your district and partner with them. Most of the time, the rules of farmers market is that it has to be grown or made from products within your county, district, whatever it's called. So then your students are growing things, they're selling them, or do farm to table and have your students figure out a way to make a school-based enterprise out of these things. This is just a very small example, but I wanted you guys to see how you can take something, simulate it in the classroom, and then turn that into your school-based enterprise. Now, that doesn't mean that it's going to be every single activity that you do is going to be in the farmer's market, because all of that legwork in the beginning is what really gets you to the school-based enterprise. Okay, so this is a video. We're not going to watch the video, but I did embed it in this presentation because it's simulation through school-based experiences. And so this is one of those videos that I call a short. And this is Mike and I, we both work for the Transition Alliance. And so we really talk about the importance of a school-based enterprise and talk about the resources of how to start a school-based enterprise very small. One of the examples is painting school parking lots. It could be that you paint them for homecoming, you paint them for Spirit Day, and so you make that into a business, or you do car washing, or you do spirit bracelets. Because let me tell you, one way to be included and to make sure your students are feeling inclusion is to get a part of your spirit wear. Because if you are the wolf pack or you are the Lions or whatever your school may be, if your students are a part of creating spirit wear, they will be included in, making sure that they're a part of all of those really cool activities that we all remember from high school. And really that's a great spirit wear is a great one. There's lots of things, but you want to think about when you're creating your school-based enterprise, the skill that you're teaching specifically is job skills. Everything that you do is about job skills. But if you find an area that the student is very good at, is there an opportunity within your community to create that bridge? Is there a job that you can find? Is there a mentor that you can find for that student? Because you don't want to spend a tremendous amount of time teaching how to make t-shirts and how to make spirit wear and make all of the students feel like they have to go into that specific track. Staying focused on the idea that job skills, everything that we're doing is teaching job skills, reinforcing the job skills. You make a mistake, you start over, you learn, you budget, you have to make money. Profit is something that you have to talk about, because if you don't make money, you can't buy more resources to sustain your school-based enterprise. And all of that is a constant while you are teaching and being a part of your school-based enterprise. And one thing that I see that people miss with school-based enterprise is doing the things like informational interviews, pre-boarding and onboarding, because what other great way to teach it than to do it in your school-based enterprise? Hold interviews. Have them fill out paperwork to work there, make them watch things about the school-based enterprise. You've got to have training materials whenever you have new students come in. Have your students that are older help you create the videos for the new students and those stakeholders and things like that. And as you can see, it all is just really a cycle of teaching job skills. And so I know that I have packed a ton of things in, but I need to leave some time for questions. I did put, this is our contact information on the last screen. I am at the University of South Carolina. I saw someone that was a Clemson fan that was on here from the beginning. It's totally fine. I still love you all. But the email that you see on the screen goes to our entire team. So if you have a question that I may not be able to answer, there's someone else on our team that can. And so that's why we have our email set up that way. I did talk fast because I knew I had a lot of slides to go through. It's packed full of resources. Just get started, and getting started, with a school-based enterprise, transition assessment, project discovery, all of those things come with so many resources for your teachers. And I don't work for Educational Associates, but I really believe in project discovery, helping you do a lot of the things that I talked about today. So I left 7 minutes for questions. I'm sorry.
Yay. No, I think 7 minutes is great. I think that, first of all, I wish that we could all give her a round of applause, because I thought that was amazing. Please screenshot this slide so you have our contact information. I think that that's the most efficient way to do it. For me, you can reach out for more information about Project Discovery. If you have questions about the webinar as well, I'm happy to, answer those. If you want information about future webinar Wednesdays, because remember, we do this the first Wednesday of every month. I'm happy to give you that as well. So these, our contact information will open the door to a plethora of resources for you. So I want to now open it up for questions. So please feel free to enter those into the chat. But I did have 2 questions about some of the resources that I thought that we could knock out right now while you guys are entering your questions into the chat. So the first one was about overcoming obstacles. They were just asking if that was the name of the website, itself, or if not, where are these modules located?
Yep. So if you see that logo in the top left corner where it says overcoming obstacles, that right there is what you're looking for when you Google it. And then you will have to create a login, but it is free. You do have to put like your email and make a password, but they don't charge you anything. And that's the script. What you see here is the middle school where you could download it in lots of different languages. And then there's also a high school curriculum. And this was just a screenshot, but there's lots of resources on there.
Perfect. Okay. And then the next one, they were asking what it was like around this slide, these two slides. They were asking what are these free resources for?
So these modules are, so if you're looking at specifically self-determination and confidence when you're working with job skills, these break down the very discrete skills that you may be looking for in your specific students. It's not easy to come off the cuff sometimes when you're doing work-based learning experiences to teach decision-making, setting goals, resolving conflict, problem solving, because it may happen at the job, but at that point it's too late. You know, you can use that as a learning experience while you're on the job, but really teaching some of those things ahead of time. So setting goals, achieving goals. So these are kind of like give you little prompts as the teacher, or give you little activities that you can do prior to your work-based learning activity, so to speak, and then on the job skills, because I know a lot of middle school teachers and early high school teachers don't have as many opportunities to go into the community or have the job site opportunities. So these are a way to simulate those skills in the classroom.
Awesome. Really quick, a question from Becky, who I actually know. Hi, Becky. She was asking if the recording will be sent to everybody after the webinar. I wanted to let you guys know that yes, everybody who attended or registered will be sent the recording afterwards and via email. And then also we will send our newsletter to you guys, and that will have like links to the videos and some of these resources and stuff. So you guys will get that as well. So no worries on that. You'll get all the information that you need. And if you don't, then you have our contact information from the previous slide. So Deborah asked, the number of transition assessments available can be so overwhelming. Do you have any preferred assessments you recommend?
Oh, yes. So for comprehensive transition assessment, like the ones that come to mind would be the TPI-3, Brigance, FISH, TAG, ChoiceMaker, ESTER. It kind of depends on the level of your student. And if you email me, I will help you with transition assessment specific to your population, or help you look at, I created a guide across grades that kind of help people look at, because not every kid can take the same assessment. We know that it's individualized, but kind of like I think I did 7th through 12th grade, just kind of generally what I would do for transition assessment based on research. And I can send you that. Just email me and I'll be glad to. Like a dream sheet is completely appropriate for a 14, 15-year-old. Some states it's 13 is required, but a dream sheet is not appropriate for a senior. We need to be at very specific goals in specific places by the time we get there in creating all of this. But, what's appropriate at those times, and career exploration turning into work-based learning kind of is a continuum across those ages. But I will definitely help you. Just send me an email.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's go ahead. We have about 2 minutes left, so I just want to show you guys really quick where to find more resources from us. So if you go to our, and Angela, yes, you will receive emails about future webinars. So if you go to our website, www.educationassociates.com. You'll see our homepage here. And if you go to the resources tab on the top right, you can find this little button right here that'll take you to the Webinar Wednesday page. It also has tons of other resources about our programs and information. But if you go to that Webinar Wednesday page, you can view all of our past webinars, recordings of all of them, including this one, which will be put up within the next couple days. So, if you miss that email or get stuck in spam for whatever reason, you can also access it here. You can binge watch all of our other episodes and have like a whole webinar Webinar Wednesday night, which how fun is that?
Fun, yay.
Right. So you can binge watch all of those and get all this great information from all of
Who needs cable? This is why I got rid of cable, right?
Exactly. All you need is Education Associates Webinar Wednesdays and you are set for life. So anyway, the final thing I will say is on this top right blue button, Let's Talk. If you click there, it's the perfect place to really learn more about our resources and kind of speak to a specialist here about your needs. So I highly recommend going here and scheduling a one-on-one overview Zoom with us. And it's kind of like a discovery call where we'll talk about your needs and kind of brainstorm with you and help you figure out the best solution for you. And we always recommend the more the merrier. So bring everybody on your team and we're happy to talk through things. But again, thank you so much for coming today. We really hope to see you on the next one. Thank you for all of our returning guests. And I hope you guys have a wonderful September. So see you in October. Bye, guys. Thanks so much, Jennifer.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too. Bye, guys.